This week, Extreme Networks is famous for being the official Wi-Fi provider of the National Football League in the United States. My guest today, Mike Leibovitz, is director at the Office of the CTO at Extreme, and we're going to ask him about all the tricks of the trade for getting fan engagement and Wi-Fi right at stadiums and a lot more. Join us right after this.
Telecom Careers, the #1 global telecom and wireless job board, telecomcareers.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back to this episode 21 of Wi-Fi Now TV. My name is Claus Hetting, and I'm your host, and we'll get a great discussion going today in just a few minutes with my guest, Mike Leibovitz of Extreme Networks. And before I do that, I want to remind you, of course, that we're taking Wi-Fi Now, the conference, to Washington, D.C. this coming April. Mike will be there, by the way. And it will, of course, be the most comprehensive update on all things Wi-Fi in the U.S. this year, and a great opportunity for you to network with all the folks from around the Wi-Fi industry. Check out our program at wifinowevents.com/USA. And if you have any questions, drop me a line at klaus@wifinowevents.com, and I'm happy to answer those directly. So don't forget to mark your calendars. The dates are April 19th to 21st. Also, if you want to see Mike Leibovitz in person, of course. Now, Mike Leibovitz of Extreme Networks, I'm delighted to have you on Wi-Fi Now. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Really excited. Certainly congratulations to you on the platform, and we're really excited to see you in Washington.
Great stuff, and we're delighted to have you. And let's get started on the real stuff here, because I want to ask you about Extreme Networks' involvement. Of course, you're famous for being the official Wi-Fi provider of the National Football League. Can you say something about how that came about in the first place, and why do you think that the NFL went that route?
Yeah, why it came about, it certainly, when we started about 5 years ago, we didn't have the intention of trying to get as many stadiums and customers. I think really internally we wanted to prove a point that we can do one building and really prove that our technology can be successful. And so we partnered with the New England Patriots at Gillette Stadium. We really did a fantastic project with them, and success breeds success, right? Once you do one correctly, you get opportunity to do more, and here we are a couple of years later, really enjoying that success.
So what's the status right now? You're doing most of the NFL stadiums now, or what's the story?
Today, and there's been a couple press and some stuff that we'll still come out and talk about, but we're in today fan-facing 10 NFL stadiums where we're actually providing the Wi-Fi technology to the fans in the bowl, in addition to the Wi-Fi provider for the National Football League. We actually have a second designation, which is the official Wi-Fi analytics provider, and our analytics technology is running in a couple of additional stadiums where we're not actually the infrastructure provider, but some of our software technologies are running inside of those buildings.
Right. Okay. And I was just going to ask you about the technology side of the story, because it's more than being able to get the right bandwidth to people in a high density environment. There's a lot more that goes into it than that. Can you say something about analytics and possibly other fan engagement solutions that you guys use?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think first and foremost, being able to deliver bandwidth and really ultimately experiences and outcomes at such a great scale. There's kind of two factors we think about. One, which is the method that we take to design a stadium end to end, right? It certainly is more than just a Wi-Fi problem. It requires everything and all the components that Extreme Networks brings to bring that stadium up and running. So there's the method of how you design and the total system that you're designing for and the throughput, and then kind of the technologies that you bring in and how you can start to enhance the fan experience beyond just providing Wi-Fi connectivity. And that's certainly where our analytics platform comes in to bring some of those data sets and some of that intelligence as to what the fans are doing, what those experiences are, and some of the measurements of what's actually going on in the buildings during game time.
And can you give us some examples of how these analytics are used today?
Yeah, there's probably a couple of really salient examples. I would say first and foremost is just being able to measure and really understand utilization and adoption inside of the stadiums. And a really important, aspect to that is not really relying on people's opinions on whether or not the Wi-Fi is good or bad, but actually being able to measure and score application by application, individual users and individual applications in different parts of the building, and be able to measure and understand how well those connections are working. Clearly, there are some decisions that can be made once you have what we refer to as good data, right? Not necessarily big data, but good data of what's coming out and the insights with which you can make better business decisions on how to engage your fans, perhaps some sort of offers that you can make to them, but really understanding in particular to each team or each club what's actually transpiring game by game, quarter by quarter, literally minute by minute inside of those buildings.
Mm-hmm. And tell us a little bit perhaps about the fan engagement part. I mean, I have to admit, I've never been to an NFL stadium. I'm deprived that way. And I will go to one eventually. But does this work? Does this typically work through an app that's downloaded by the fans, or how does this work?
Yeah, I think most fan experience is driven through what most refer to as a game day app. So just about all the teams in the league that are doing some sort of technology or some sort of communication to their fans have an existing game day app that the fans are used to using. And then the questions start coming in as to what else can you add into those applications? What else can you do to enhance that fan experience? And, frankly, one of the things I know that the NFL and the clubs think about a lot is the experience that you can get at home versus the experience you can get in the building. And the technology is trying to augment or help bring people from home where, sitting HD TV, your own couch, your own beer, it's a fantastic experience that you can get at home. Coming into the building, you can never replace or recreate just being with 70, 80,000 people and the energy that you feel in the building. But the technology starts to augment some of those experiences and really bring people back, right? It's the recurrence and sort of that loyalty of why you want to continue going. And the technology doesn't solve that, but it helps to augment that experience. Absolutely.
Yeah, sure. And in terms of video, presumably that's a big part of what you get with the fan app. Is that typical or?
Yeah, most of the teams that we work with have in-game video, which is kind of twofold. One, where you're able to actually access live cameras in the building, so be able to get vantage points from different places in the building, kind of a raw feed, if you will, where you can access, again, if you're sitting in the 300 level or the upper section and you want to see a vantage point from downstairs, you can log in literally to those cameras and see what's going on. And then, of course, there's instant replay on demand if a big play or a big event happened in the game and you missed it, which actually happened to me the very first game I was at years ago in Gillette Stadium, where I kind of was a naysayer and said, I don't know, are people going to use instant replay on demand? And I swear, the first play of the game, there was a big play that happened. The first play of the game, I wasn't watching. I pulled out my phone and I watched that replay, and it was kind of funny. Since then, I've been more of a believer, if you will.
Cool. So what kind of usage would you get? Do you have any at a typical NFL game? I mean, is it like 80% of the fans coming in there, they'll do something with the app while they're there? Or?
Usually you'll see most public venues, stadiums for sure, typically you'll see somewhere around 30 to 35% of fans that will connect at least once in the game. I think one thing that's kind of unique or different about stadiums is that when you're designing, that it's typically one fan, one device. Other environments, whether it's education or healthcare, for example, there's multiple devices that fans are carrying. In a public venue, you typically see somewhere between 30 to 40%. At the collegiate level, interestingly enough, we do see actually larger percentages, typically in the 40 to 45% of fans that will connect, at least at one point in the game, to the Wi-Fi network.
Mm-hmm. And so what do you think might be the next big thing in terms of stadium Wi-Fi technology and fan engagement, for that matter?
Yeah, I think that the big goal for many right now is really the concept of personalization. right? And I think a lot of teams and really outside of the stadium venue market, a lot of different types of companies are thinking about similar, which is how can I really truly give a personalized experience to the individual coming in that makes a connection, a bond with the team, with the building, and understands that, hey, the reason I'm coming back is because they know the types of food or the types of things I like to do when I'm in the building, and they're personalizing that experience to what I want and making it the ultimate experience, not a generic experience that anybody can be given.
Right, exactly. And I was going to ask you about some of the other verticals, because I think my next question was going to be, how do you see the kind of technology and the kind of solutions that are spearheaded, if you like, at stadiums, possibly migrating into other types of public venues? I know these verticals are very different, by the way, but I'm thinking about, for example, retail. There's been obviously a huge amount of interest in getting retail up to speed on consumer engagement and so forth. Do you have a view on that, Mike?
We say all the time, and there's kind of two ways to say it, but game day is every day. Or another way to say it is everybody has a game day, right? And the game day experience in other verticals, it's different, right? I mean, in a stadium, typically NFL teams, 8 to 10 times a year where they have a game event, they rely on the system to be ready that day. They can't test otherwise. You can't recreate 70, 80,000 people in the building. When it's empty, you can't touch it. But that game day, it's mission critical for them at that given time, that 4 or 5 hour block. When you think about other verticals, you relate it to, let's say, healthcare. Healthcare, every single day is game day, mission critical, life critical scenarios that rely on the Wi-Fi network. And, you can't call timeouts, right? There's no timeouts in a healthcare environment. And so the reliability and the resiliency that's required to make these networks function, there's a very good analogy that can be driven from really everybody that's thinking about Wi-Fi today as a mission critical system for their business, whether it's to drive more revenue, to improve experiences of those that are coming, or really just to optimize and improve workflows and employee productivity.
Right, and I did want to ask you a little bit about a vertical that I personally know virtually nothing about, I have to admit, but I do keep hearing, and that's healthcare, and I do keep hearing, I talk to people that are very interested, and they ask me, what do you know about that? I said, nearly nothing. But maybe you can enlighten us a little bit, because obviously it is a super interesting business for a lot of Wi-Fi companies, and of course a lot of healthcare companies out there. What are the specifics, would you say, of addressing that market from a Wi-Fi solution point of view?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's interesting about healthcare is that, and a lot of people don't necessarily recognize that, the healthcare industry has been utilizing Wi-Fi perhaps longer than anybody else. The education market was in very early, particularly higher education market was in very early as well. But what's really unique or distinct about healthcare, aside from the criticality of what's going on, are the different types of devices and the different types of uses of the same wireless LAN network. And over the last number of years, doctors and nurses and medical applications and voice over inside of healthcare. And I think one dramatic change has been the increase of patients. And when you think about patient experience and fan experience, there's a lot of similarities there that come out instantaneously. But now imagine an environment where you have patients that are lying in their bed, relying on Netflix, relying on other, video type traffic for forms of entertainment, and on the very same Wi-Fi network, medical devices, medical applications, communication that are mission critical, life critical scenarios, all happening in the same RF and the same radio frequency domain, which makes it unique and extremely challenging to make it all work.
And also from a security point of view, presumably that's a big part of it as well, right?
Absolutely. I mean, not just without question. I mean, patient records and sensitive data that is traveling over the air has to be secured, has to be segmented as it hits the wire. There's a lot of challenges in BYOD. Doctors bringing in their own devices, being able to recognize those devices, provision of policy, whether it's a hospital-owned device or a BYOD device for a doctor or a nurse. And of course, you're contending with the patients and trying to segment their traffic, their guest traffic, from anything that might influence or be able to touch that patient record information or any of the clinical information as well that's traversing the same wired and wireless network infrastructure.
It's an environment that requires a lot of different technical components, obviously deployment issues as well. Mike, I want to go over a little bit of the market trends, if you like, because
Sure.
You obviously follow this a lot as well. Where do you see the growth coming from for the Wi-Fi industry? Now, it's not that the Wi-Fi industry as such needs, well, I suppose everybody needs a bit more growth, but it's doing well, right? But where do you see it coming from going forward?
I think what's interesting today, there's been a lot of revenue driven in the enterprise space, a lot of businesses, medium to large enterprises that have been deploying Wi-Fi for some time. One of the interesting trends that's starting to hit is some of the down market buyers, whether you call it SMB, SME, that are really coming up market in terms of their requirements and their needs, essentially looking for more enterprise class features and solutions than what traditionally they may have acquired from, a Best Buy or a vendor that might be able to sell a single access point. That's certainly one trend that's starting to hit in terms of the buyer or the market segmentation. A lot of people coming in looking for enterprise class hardware and software solutions to make their business function the same as a large enterprise would.
Now, you guys are, correct me if I'm wrong, very much focused on the enterprise, the public-facing enterprise particularly. Have you delved into the other side of the Wi-Fi market with carriers and so forth, or is that kind of out of bounds for you still?
We haven't specifically focused or targeted the service provider market. We do have some service providers that we work with in more outdoor and enterprise deployments. We do work with one particular service provider in our stadium venue business. They're one of the incumbent tier one large guys. I don't necessarily need to mention their name, but you probably could figure it out pretty rapidly. They do sponsor Wi-Fi deployments in a number of stadiums. And so we have a really, really strong relationship with them and some potential opportunities in the future to evolve that business beyond stadium venues for sure.
And what do you think personally about things like the Link New York City project? I don't know if you've been following that, but that has been all over the news over the past week with these kiosks going up with blasting out 450 megabits per second in the streets of New York City. How do you like that? As a Wi-Fi industry professional.
Yeah. I mean, to me, Wi-Fi is not necessarily a scientific marvel, but from a social perspective, what's transpiring over the last number of years in terms of people's expectation wherever they go to have Wi-Fi connectivity. Most of them expect it for free, right? Not a lot of people necessarily want to pay for Wi-Fi when they're in a public place. But what we thought about a year or two ago in terms of providing Wi-Fi in an airplane at 30, 40,000 feet at the time kind of seemed crazy. Now it's de facto. They say somewhere between 60 to 70% of airline tickets are being bought solely on the decision of does that airplane have Wi-Fi or not. A pretty compelling stat there. And certainly the airlines are paying attention. Just being able to walk around the city, any city for that matter, and have Wi-Fi connectivity wherever you go is really interesting. I think that the challenges that it may present to some of the carriers that have traditional business models in the cellular space, they're probably going to come under some levels of attack, right? There's some really, really interesting dynamics that are starting to occur with data-only type transmission that Wi-Fi can provide, voice, video, and obviously data. Really interesting things.
Yeah, lots of exciting stuff ahead, and I couldn't agree with you more. By the way, Mike, and I'm delighted that you chose to come on the show, and we're very happy to have you in DC for the Wi-Fi Now conference, where everybody out there you get to meet Mike and lots of great insights. We'll have lots of great discussion. Thank you so much, and come back and see us again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was great. Thanks, Claus.
Thanks. All right, everybody, that's it for this week's episode. On our next episode, we're going to post a special bonus episode with great insights on Wi-Fi monetization by one of my favorite conference speakers. His name is Johan Terve, and he works for Aptila Networks. We're going to post that. It's actually a recorded presentation from our Wi-Fi Now conference in Amsterdam late last year. So watch this space, keep watching, and we'll get all of that out to you very shortly. I want to thank my guest, Mike Leibovitz, for coming on. And I just want to tell you, keep watching and see you all next week. Thanks for joining us.
Wi-Fi Now is a production of RCR TV News. To suggest a show topic or to learn more about Wi-Fi Now events, you can reach Claus Hetting at klaus@hettingconsulting.com. To find out more about Wi-Fi Now and all things wireless, visit rcrwireless.com.